One day, as Christmas approached, I received a phone call from my son's stepdaughter, Anna. She sounded frantic and asked me to come to the house right away. I got in my car and headed over to my son's place, a place I hadn't visited in quite some time. When I arrived,
Emily?
Grandma.
my granddaughter, Emily, was sitting on the concrete steps of the porch, dressed in her school tracksuit, hugging her knees and shivering in the cold.
What happened? Why are you outside in such light clothes? Huh? Where are your parents?
They went on a trip overseas with my sister.
What? Well, never mind. Get in the car right now. You're freezing.
I quickly got her into the car and drove to the nearest store to buy a warm drink for her. After meeting up at my house with Anna, I listened to her explanation in detail. The more I heard about what my son and his wife were doing, the angrier I became. Since Emily and Anna had reached out to me for help, I couldn't just turn my back on them.
Anna, do you have the keys to that house?
Yes.
Then let's go there right now. Just bring what's really important.
What are you going to do, Grandma?
I chuckled softly.
We don't need that house anymore, do we?
My name is Alice Howard, 64 years old. 2 years ago, I lost my husband, Ryan, and living alone. Even so, my days are fairly busy. I am fully occupied managing what Ryan has left behind for me. I married about 40 years ago into what you might call an old, established family in the countryside. Back then, I never imagined I would end up managing this large house. My family home was within commuting distance of the city by bus. Ryan and I were college classmates. We got married right after graduation. I moved to this unfamiliar rural area, relying solely on him. Watching him, who was just an ordinary student like me, suddenly being treated as the son of a local notable and heir to the family, left me quite astonished. Then, my mother-in-law taught me a lot about how to support such a husband. The things my mother-in-law said made sense in this region. Even though it was exhausting, I eventually accepted it. Thanks to that, even when there's no one left, I'm still treated with a certain level of respect as the one managing this house and land. When I got married, it was a time when ordinary people were all dreaming of moving to the city. That's why, back then, I was seen as a peculiar person who chose to move to the countryside. My mother-in-law probably trained me strictly to dispel those views as quickly as possible. Then, not long after we got married, I gave birth to a child. My mother-in-law and everyone around us were overjoyed since it was a boy who'll carry on the family name. However, after giving birth to my son, I wasn't in good health, and as a result, we didn't have more children. How much I regretted that later on. Even so, that son is married, and with my in-laws and my husband gone, I am the one managing the current house and land. I was left with enough passive income to maintain this large house and still live comfortably. Of course, maintaining it requires a certain amount of knowledge and the use of human resources. Thanks to my mother-in-law's training and my habit of reading even after graduating from college, I've managed to deal with relatives and people coming in and out without getting deceived. Sometimes, even at this age, there are things I must learn, but that adds some zest to my life. The reason why I have to manage everything myself like this is because of one specific reason. Ryan willed all his assets to me. Why? It was because of my son, Matthew's personality. In a normal inheritance, it would be split 50-50 between Matthew and me, the spouse. However, Ryan did not do that. He had said for several years before his passing,
"If we give him half now, this house will fall apart. I want you to judge whether Matthew will ever change his ways."
I took his words to heart as part of his will. You see, By that time, Matthew had already remarried. Just 6 months after his first wife, Natalie, whom he had been with for over 10 years, passed away from an illness, he registered his longtime mistress. Ryan, who had already been in declining health, was shocked to learn this reality about our son, who had seemed to be doing so well. This discovery further worsened Ryan's condition. Matthew had been the heir, and up until he became an adult and got married, I thought there was no major problem. Well, I do regret spoiling him because he was our only child. Not just me, the whole family did. His grades were decent enough that he went from a fairly reputable high school in the state to the top university in the region. He could have aimed for a university in the city, but he said he wanted to stay local. After graduation, he got a job at a company run by an acquaintance. Then he married a local girl. At that time, Matthew said he wanted to live independently in their own home. Therefore, we built a house for a young couple on a piece of land we owned. Matthew and his wife, Natalie, lived very happily together. However, after giving birth to their daughter, Emily, Natalie's health declined. She was then told by doctors that having more children was impossible. I remembered my own experience and did everything I could for Natalie. Her mother visited often to help. We also arranged for a babysitter and housekeeper. Thankfully, Natalie's condition eventually stabilized. However, about 10 years later, she was diagnosed with cancer. Looking back, Natalie was a very patient woman. She must have believed she caused everyone to worry when she struggled with her health early in their marriage. Perhaps that's why she tried to endure as much as possible this time. As a result, by the time the cancer was discovered, it was already too late. While little Emily clung to her, Natalie lost her young life. I was deeply saddened in many ways at that time. Most of all, I thought of Natalie as my daughter. I also loved my granddaughter, Emily. Hence, losing her mother was heartbreaking for me too. Yet, there was another major reason that weighed heavily on my heart. While Natalie was receiving end-of-life care, Matthew already had a mistress. Perhaps because of that, he rarely visited Natalie during her final days. Matthew remarried less than 6 months after Natalie's death. His new wife, Rachel, was a woman who worked at the nightclub where he used to visit frequently. To my shock, they had already been together for more than 5 years by that time. In the diary Natalie left for me, she wrote in heartbreaking detail about the days Matthew stopped coming home. Perhaps she intended to use it as evidence for a divorce someday. Since she's gone, I can never know for sure. The new wife, Rachel, was 2 years older than Matthew. She boldly moved into the house we had built for them, bringing along her daughter, Anna, who was 6 years older than Emily. Of course, I opposed this marriage. He betrayed Natalie, cheating with a nightclub woman for years, hardly visited his bedridden wife, and then remarried right away. I never imagined my son could be so heartless. However, Matthew shamelessly said,
"The least I did was marry the woman you arranged for me. Isn't that enough to fulfill my duty?" And Natalie, well, she broke down even before giving birth to a male heir. What's the point of getting married if she couldn't do that? A woman who can't even have a proper married life. If I don't find an outlet outside, it'll affect my work.
Up until that point, I had thought my son was cold toward Natalie. Even so, this manner of speaking was excessively harsh. I blamed myself. Where did Matthew become this kind of person? Was it because we spoiled him as our only son? Ryan and I certainly did. Those around Matthew had also pampered him, treating him like a celebrity's son. Still, we taught him the difference between right and wrong when he was young. With such thoughts in my mind, I stayed away from my son's home for a while. I was also busy after Ryan passed away. They only came over during holidays and Christmas. That had been my mistake. It happened on one Christmas. That year, even after December started, the weather kept changing. Some days you'd sweat with just a bit of movement, while others were suddenly bitterly cold. For an aging body, it was quite tough to handle. Still, it was Christmas. While I was dealing with reports from here and there, my personal cell phone rang unexpectedly. Who could it be? An unfamiliar number. Still, it was my personal phone. Only a limited number of people knew that number. So, I decided to answer.
Hello, is this Emily's grandmother?
It was a young woman's voice.
Emily's. Yes, that's me. Who is this?
Sorry to call out of the blue. This is Anna.
Rachel's daughter. Why would she be calling me?
I'm sorry, but I don't have much time. Could you please come to our house right away?
Where was she calling from? It was quite noisy around her.
What? Why?
I know it's hard to trust a call from me, but there's no time. I'll explain the reasons later. I'm sorry.
With that, Anna hung up the phone. It felt like I'd been caught in a strange situation, but luckily, I had a little free time right then. I rushed outside to get into my car. A dry, cold wind brushed against my cheek. Come to think of it, I remembered how the temperature had dropped sharply compared to the previous day. I started the car and drove to the parking lot of my son's house, which I hadn't visited in a while. The lot had space for 4 cars, and at that moment, 2 cars were parked there. Could Matthew and his family be home? With that thought, I got out of the car and headed toward the front door. Then,
Emily?
Grandma.
I hurried over to her. Emily was sitting on the concrete steps of the porch, dressed in her school tracksuit, hugging her knees and shivering in the cold.
What happened? Why are you outside in such light clothes, huh? Where are your dad and mom?
They went on a trip overseas with my sister.
What?
I felt something was off.
Anyway, get in the car. You're freezing.
I quickly got Emily into the car and went to the nearest store to buy her a warm drink. She must have been really cold. She warmed her hands carefully before opening the lid and slowly sipping. I wanted to ask her right away what had happened, but getting back home safely was my first priority. Once we got back, I brought Emily into the living room. After calling the housekeeper, I asked her to quickly prepare 2 cups of warm tea and some snacks. As soon as Emily entered the room and felt the warmth, she let out a sigh of relief. Seeing her like this, I couldn't shake off a terrible feeling.
Are you feeling better?
Yeah.
Even as she responded, she seemed younger than the Emily I remembered. She should be 14, in the prime of her growth. Even when she was crying by her mother's bedside, I remember her wrists having more flesh on them. Feeling something was off, I murmured.
Emily, what's this?
Upon closer look, I noticed Emily's hands are covered with severe chapped skin. When I was a child, it happened to everyone occasionally, but you don't see it much these days.
Oh, this. It's been like this since last year.
It looks so painful. Are you using any cream?
No, I don't have any cream. I think it's because I use hot water for cleaning the bathroom, washing dishes, and doing laundry.
What? Isn't the housekeeper around anymore?
Dad made her quit. He said it was too expensive and told me to do it.
What about your mom? Rachel?
She's busy with a lot of things, and Dad doesn't like her hands getting rough.
What about your sister?
Sister.
I stopped there.
Did someone tell you to call her that?
She nodded in silence.
Dad said to call her that outside. At home, I call her Anna. I prefer it that way too.
I see. Then use that name.
Okay. And She's not a mom to me, Grandma. She told me to call her Madam. I don't want to, but if I don't, I get hit.
Emily forced a bitter smile as she said this. What is going on? What had been happening in that house while I stayed away? When Emily had eaten about half of the cake brought to her, she suddenly seemed to remember something. She reached into her tracksuit pocket and pulled out a phone. It looked like a simple phone, the kind an elementary school student might have. Emily operated it and began typing a message to someone.
What are you doing?
Anna told me to let her know when Grandma got here.
That girl.
Yeah, Anna was also the one who bought me this phone.
What? What happened to your previous phone?
A little while after Dad remarried, she said it was too early for me to have one and took it away.
She must mean Rachel.
Did Dad say anything about that?
Emily shrugged her shoulders dramatically and frowned.
Dad doesn't know anything about me. When I couldn't contact my friends for a while, Anna apologized that it wasn't the latest model, but still bought this phone for me. She also told me to make sure it didn't get found.
Make sure it didn't get found.
By whom? Of course, it must be Rachel, the one who confiscated the previous phone.
Oh, Grandma, I just got a reply from Anna. She's on her way from the airport.
What? Wasn't she supposed to be on the overseas trip with them?
She said she was pretending to go and would come back, so she told me to wait. She said she'd find a way to get out of it.
What kind of conversations had been happening between these two? As of the moment, I had no choice but to wait. It was 3 hours later when Anna arrived at my house, riding on buses to get here. It's a regional city. Even if you return back from the nearest airport, it takes quite some time.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Thank you for picking up Emily so quickly after my brief call.
Anna thanked me.
Ma'am. So, you call me ma'am, do you?
I don't deserve to call you Grandma.
Her tone was clear and firm. There was no hint of flattery in her gaze. This girl, though her appearance was as flashy as Rachel's, had a strong backbone.
You are Emily's grandmother, not mine, so it makes sense.
I see. Then call me whatever you like. So, what on earth is going on with those two? This so-called overseas trip?
They had been saying for a while that it would be the three of us, including me, but I didn't know what might happen, so I faked an illness to get out of it. They're planning to spend 3 weeks abroad, traveling from Korea to Southeast Asia.
3 weeks. What about the company?
This situation seemed more complicated than I had imagined.
And my mother planned to hand me over to him during this trip.
What do you mean?
Exactly what it sounds like. That man has had his eyes on both my mother and me for a while now.
That's unbelievable.
It's true, Grandma.
Emily, who had been sitting beside Anna with clenched fists, joined the conversation.
I've seen it so many times. After I finished cleaning the bathroom, when Dad would keep pestering Anna to join him in there, Anna always managed to brush it off, saying he was joking. But Dad would glare and yell at me to get lost.
No, Emily, it's because you were there that it didn't go further. I was always worried that you might get hurt. I shudder to think what would have happened if you hadn't been there.
What on earth? Matthew. How rotten has he become? I sat there for a moment, lost in thought, in front of the two girls who were clearly protecting each other. These two seemed to be more than just close. They were comrades united against a common enemy.
So, what do you two usually do? Emily, you mentioned earlier that Rachel told you to call her ma'am.
Yes. My mother was with that man for his money, and she married him and settled in. I watched him visit our houses throughout high school. I also noticed how his gaze on me gradually became more and more lecherous. Now, he acts like he owns the place because we live in the same houses. It's disgusting.
Anna hugged herself tightly, expressing her deep repulsion.
But one thing I was grateful for was being able to go to college. I buried myself in studies and part-time work to avoid going home. I thought about leaving for good, but
Anna stayed because of me.
Emily cut in.
Even today. Those two left me behind, gave me no key, and went out. They told me to go wherever I wanted, but didn't leave me any money.
Leaving her alone in tracksuit. The wind makes the temperature feel even colder. The sight of her hugging her knees and waiting.
Anna told me to wait. She said to wait until they were on the plane and wouldn't be able to come back.
That's why you called me.
Yes. I stayed with them until the very last moment before they boarded. But if I left Emily alone for too long, she would catch a cold. So I called you in secret. I'm sorry it was still cold for you, Emily.
Honestly speaking, she could have contacted me earlier, but I understood their desperation to get those two out of the country first. Since they had come to me, I couldn't let them down.
Anna, do you have the keys to that house?
Yes.
Then, let's go. Bring only what's truly important.
What are you going to do, Grandma?
I chuckled softly.
We don't need that house anymore, do we?
3 weeks had already passed since the new year began. It was the time when both work and school had returned to their normal routines. 2 people dragging suitcases stormed into my house.
Mother, what the hell is going on?
The moment he opened his mouth, Matthew yelled at me. It seemed they had naturally tried to return to their house. He had seen it. The place where everything had disappeared.
Oh, you mean that? It was mine, so I decided I didn't need it anymore. I had it demolished, cleared the land, and sold it. By the way, your belongings are in this storage unit.
Right after everything happened, I immediately contacted an old acquaintance in the real estate business and a demolition contractor. Understanding the situation, they quickly agreed to my proposal out of loyalty. I tossed the storage unit key to Matthew. Startled, the two of them had failed to catch it, and a small clink had echoed in the entrance.
Are you kidding me, Mother? That was my house.
Oh. How do you figure that?
Huh? What do you mean?
Matthew, you're mistaken. We built that house for you, but the deed was in our names. And now it's mine. Why would there be any problem with me deciding what to do with it?
What about the girls? What happened to them?
The girls? Rachel, you're the one asking that?
I sneered.
Well, come inside.
I said, leading the two into the house.
Huh? Not the living room?
I silently led them further in. We were heading to the large room.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Walking through the hallway, I opened the door. Inside, more than a dozen people were waiting. However, what had first caught the eyes of the two behind me was
Emily?
Anna.
the 2 girls were seated right beside the seat where I would soon sit.
Anna. Why are you ignoring my calls?
Emily, you went and told your grandmother, didn't you? Since when did you get so sneaky?
Rachel and Matthew's faces flushed with anger, tried to approach the girls, but the house members who had been waiting restrained them and made them sit across from us. Even so, they were breathing heavily, glaring at us, seemingly unaware of the people gathered around them.
Well then, it looks like everyone is here.
I said, looking around the room.
Now, everyone, please proceed. Let's start with you.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Howard, welcome back from your extended vacation. I'm afraid that's the end of the line for you.
Hearing the voice, Matthew snapped his head to the left.
Mr. Anderson.
Matthew's direct superior, Anderson, speaking calmly but with eyes that did not smile.
Honestly, I never expected you to request a 3-week leave of absence at this point. I thought you'd have outgrown such bad habits by now.
The low, commanding voice made Matthew shrink in fear. He had always been arrogant toward those below him, but weak before his superiors. That hadn't changed since he was a child.
But before, you approved.
Listen, Mr. Howard, do you know what your value is?
What?
If you don't know, I'll tell you. Your value in this company is solely that you're the heir of a prominent family in this city,
Matthew gritted his teeth.
but now that doesn't seem to mean anything anymore.
What do you mean by that?
Mr. Anderson then turned to face me.
Matthew.
I looked at Matthew straight in the eyes, and he blatantly avoided my gaze.
Today, I plan to disclose the contents of the will I wrote the other day in front of your attorney.
A will?
Yes. I needed to write it in advance, otherwise, my inheritance would go to you, wouldn't it?
Mother?
It's already safely stored in a certain place. The contents are simple. If anything happens to me, all of my assets will go to Emily.
Matthew's mouth dropped open in shock, and he froze. Several seconds passed by.
No, I must have heard something strange just now. It can't be right. Maybe my ears are still off from the plane ride.
No, Mrs. Howard hasn't said anything out of the ordinary.
Mr. Smith, our family's lawyer, interjected.
The late master removed you, Matthew, from the line of succession after considering your abilities and spending habits at that time. I still remember his words from back then.
That's right. Back then, you.
Oh, you've just recalled now?
I shook my head in disbelief. Mr. Anderson continued from where the lawyer and I left off.
As you can see, Mrs. Howard has decided to completely strip you of your inheritance rights. Therefore, our company has no reason to give you any special treatment.
This can't be.
What mattered to our company was the connection with a prominent landowning family in this area, not your personal abilities. Now, what to do with you?
Mr. Anderson glanced at me. I gave a slight nod.
Feel free to handle it as you see fit.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Word has already spread throughout the company that you requested a 3-week leave for a mere vacation. The higher ups are planning your demotion and reassignment. Be grateful that's all that's happening.
No way.
Matthew collapsed on the spot. It seemed he had lost all the strength in his body.
That's ridiculous.
Just then, Rachel leaned forward.
Mrs. Howard, if Emily is the heir, then what about Anna? Isn't she also part of the inheritance?
Anna? And why would you think that?
Because legally, she is listed as Matthew's child too, isn't she? Isn't that why she's sitting next to you right now?
Stop embarrassing yourself, Mother.
It was Anna who sharply interrupted.
Embarrassing?
I hadn't been related by a single drop of blood to anyone in this family. Why would a complete outsider like me have any right to this inheritance? Are you stupid?
What did you say? How dare you talk to your parent like that? And by the way, I've been leaving you voicemails asking when you'll join the trip, and you haven't replied at all.
That's right. We were really looking forward to it.
Matthew chimed in.
Looking forward to it, huh?
Anna said as she pulled out her smartphone.
Everyone, please listen to this for a moment.
Murmurs then filled the room.
Hey, Anna, how about tonight? Come take a bath with Dad.
Sorry, I have to go to work now.
What? You can't listen to what your father says?
A dull thud could be heard, as if something was being hit. That sound was probably the washing machine.
Stop it, Dad. Anna clearly doesn't want to.
Shut up.
Emily's voice was followed by a thud.
Emily.
Anna, you have work, right? Hurry.
Thank you.
The sound of hurried footsteps echoed, followed by a door opening and a rattling noise from behind. I see. What the two of them had told me so far was only the tip of the iceberg.
What is this?
That's Matthew's voice, isn't it?
The people in the room exchanged solemn glances between Anna, Emily, and Matthew. Anna stopped the recording and said firmly,
This is just a part of it. I was constantly feeling this kind of danger. And Emily helped protect me by being forced to clean the bathroom and toilet. Not just this time, but also by warning me when he came back home.
How did you manage to do that?
Emily glared silently at Rachel as she pulled out her phone.
What? I thought I took that phone away from you.
Rachel, did you just say you took it away?
I questioned.
Even elementary school kids have reasons to use a phone these days, and you took it away from Emily, who's in middle school.
Mother, it was part of her upbringing, you know?
Yes, exactly. She doesn't need the latest model, does she?
Then, at the very least, she should have a basic one. Kids nowadays need to communicate when they go out with friends, and the school sends out important messages. Were you even receiving any notifications from the school?
What? I'm busy. Do I look like I have time to attend this child's school events?
Huh. Busy with what, I wonder?
Anna chuckled softly.
What is that supposed to mean, Anna? How dare you laugh at your parent like that?
Because your so-called busy life still revolves around deceiving men, doesn't it?
What?
Matthew's gaze turned toward Rachel.
We're ready. Mr. Johnson, please come in.
Anna called out. The door opened, revealing a man slightly younger than the couple, accompanied by another man in a suit.
What?
Rachel's expression changed dramatically.
Long time no see, Rachel. I never thought I'd see you again, especially here. I lost everything because of you.
No, how? Why are you here?
Let me introduce him to everyone.
Anna began.
This is Mr. Johnson. He is one of the victims whom this woman deceived and swindled out of money.
Oh, Anna, when you say one of the victims, does that mean there are many more?
I asked Anna.
Yes, she's always switching from one man to another. There were many others, but he suffered the most. He was the most decent among them. Mr. Johnson, why don't you tell everyone what this woman did to you?
Indeed. Mr. Johnson, what exactly did Rachel do to you?
Marriage fraud and theft.
The room stirred with his words.
Huh? What are you talking about? You gave me that money willingly.
I only agreed to invest because you and your daughter said you wanted to start an independent business. You convinced me to join you.
Mr. Johnson responded, glaring directly at Rachel.
You found a promising property and claimed you needed a down payment. So I withdrew all the money I had in savings and handed it over to you. The next day, you vanished.
Do you have any proof?
Anna operated her phone and played another audio recording.
Hurry up, let's go.
What on earth is going on?
We scammed a ton of money out of that Johnson, so we're getting out of here and heading to a new town.
Rachel slammed the table with her hand.
How could you have possibly known that?
Of course. I've been preparing to drag you down to hell this whole time.
How dare you say that to your own mother?
Huh? I stopped thinking of you as a mother when you started hitting me and skipping my meals, just because some guy you were dating showed interest in me. And during this trip, you were planning to offer me to your husband, weren't you?
I'm the one who gave birth to you. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, right. Clearly, the word child abuse isn't in your dictionary.
At that moment, the man standing behind Johnson stepped forward.
In other words, there's still more dirt to uncover about you,
He said, pulling out a police badge. Rachel gasped and jumped back in shock.
Why is the police here?
You're really stupid. Mr. Johnson said he's pressing charges for fraud and theft. Isn't that right?
Yes, Anna found me and arranged for this meeting. Rachel, you should give up now.
Fraud, theft, and I can also testify in detail about the child abuse I suffered. There are things that can't even be said here.
Anna declared. I heard Emily swallow hard. I had come to understand this must be why Anna was so determined to protect Emily from going through what she had.
I will testify about every little thing that was done to me. Even though it makes me sick to remember, it's worth it if it means putting you behind bars.
What a strong child. My son may have become a worthless man and got involved with a terrible woman, but I'm glad I met Anna. Well, after that, Matthew and Rachel got divorced. As absurd as it sounds, The saying when the money runs out, the relationship ends was true for them. I heard that when Matthew visited Rachel in prison, they exchanged insults. Thanks to the audio recordings and photos Anna had meticulously collected, Rachel's crimes were gradually uncovered, and more charges surfaced. It was expected that Anna had suffered child abuse, but according to the police officers who conducted the investigation, the details were even more horrifying than anticipated. After hearing this, I resolved to do whatever I could for Anna. However, Anna herself firmly insisted that all she needed was a job after graduation. In that case, I decided to find her the best job I could. As for Matthew, just as Mr. Anderson said, he was demoted and transferred. Yes, transferred to a branch in other state. He was given the position of section manager. It was difficult to demote him from a department head to a regular employee. Hence, they placed him in a role where he could cause the least harm, in an area where he had never worked before. At the end, it was our protection on this land that ruined Matthew. As his mother, I can only hope that he might become a decent person in the outside world. Though I don't have much hope. As for us, hearing the sounds of children around the house every day is such a joy. This spacious house had been home to Emily, Anna, and me. The job I arranged for Anna is to work as an assistant, helping Emily, who will eventually inherit this house. She had no objections to this arrangement.
If you need me, ma'am, I'll gladly obtain any qualifications necessary from now on,
Anna said confidently. With this strong girl by her side, I felt assured about Emily's future. Even so, no matter how strong she may be, there might be times when the trauma of past abuse resurfaces. I will continue to support these two. In order to do that, I must stay healthy and strong. Since Matthew is my son, I had found it hard to take decisive action against him, the source of this household's troubles. Adding up to it was that woman, like a parasite. Since these children had desperately removed them, I had wanted them to enjoy a life full of age-appropriate happiness.